The risk management module in Interact HRMS is, like all other modules, a solution that's designed in a generic way so it can be used for multiple purposes, but the core purpose is for you to manage your HR related risk, and that's why you have it in an HR system, because we know the system is aware of the employees and their positions and their responsibilities, and the system also provides a communication platform for all employees to share information. And therefore, you will use it to manage risk also. And that means we're going to first of all set up a framework that defines what kind of risk sources you are concerned about, what types of risk that you need to track. Every business has their own set of risks that are most important to be aware of. And then the risks will be defined and can be identified and alerted on by the employees, after which you will have risk committees which consist of risk officers to evaluate and assess these risks, and those risks that are deemed important enough because of the consequences. And those assessments, once they are done, they will allow you to determine which ones are the risks that have the highest business impact, and therefore create risk mitigation action plans. And those action plans again can be reviewed and lead to specific tasks and activities assigned to individuals who then need to follow up and make sure that they complete those tasks within the required time frame. So let's go and take a look at the framework first of all. We'll start off with the risk management setup itself. You notice that we have the usual numbering schemes that we can set up. We can define whether we're just going to do a risk assessment as such, or whether we will assess the business impact also. Everything really is configurable. As you can see, the risk occurrence probability can be with a scale from 1 to 5, the risk consequences 1 to 5, the business impact scale 1 to 5. You will see all this being used in a minute when we look at the assessments. The organization or business impact classification, in our case, as a default, we have an operational, a financial, and a legal impact. And for each one of those, we're going to be using different abbreviations, so O, F, and L, but it could have been something else. The risk mitigation strategies are, in a generic way, can be only one of 4. Either you avoid the risk, or you retain the risk because you assume that it's something that you can handle, or you try to reduce it, or you transfer the risk, for example, to an insurance company. Then you have default workflow as to who needs to approve and review these types of risks. You can set up your risk assessment frequency, because maybe you need to assess risk on a daily or monthly or weekly or annual basis. All that is user defined. The same thing applies to the risk mitigation action plan, and then the review of that action plan. So each one of them can have their own frequency. Obviously, it all depends on the situations that you're facing and the business that you're in, how frequent and how urgent these types of assessments and reviews will be. And then finally, you can link this to many different modules in Interact. It really is a very seamlessly integrated solution that is linked to the job classification, to performance management, to probationary periods, organization units, disciplinary actions, the hiring process, employee groups, health and safety, termination, everything, recruitment, payroll, and so on. Everywhere will we be tracking risk. So let's look at the next step here and look at some of the elements in the risk framework. So first of all, let's look at risk sources that have been defined. Now, if we're following an HR risk management framework, then we would be worried first of all about the sources of risk that are associated with HR matters. So compensation and benefits is a risk area. Hiring is a risk area, obviously. Occupational health and safety, and then the supervision of employees, the conduct of employees, and what happens when employees exit the organization. Those are some of the main original sources of risk in an organization, and this is completely user defined. The color coding, the description, the source name, the number of sources, everything you see here is really based on the model that you want to follow. Now, once we've defined the risk sources, we'll look at the types of risk that are caused by these risk sources. And here I have some examples: financial abuse, discriminatory practices, hiring of unsuitable or unsafe candidates, wrongful hiring, environmental issues, personal injury or death, and so on. So all of this are types of risks that we want to monitor, that we need to be aware of, and that are caused by some of the sources that we saw earlier. Now you can define what kind of impact. Remember, we talked about financial or legal or operational impact. So you can kind of link all these types of risk with the default business impact that we expect from it, and some color coding also. Again, everything is user defined and completely configurable based on your specific framework. Now we're setting up the framework. We have the risk sources and types. Now, in order to deal with risks, we're going to have risk officers, first of all. We need to have some people assigned in the system who will be responsible for assessing risk. So I have picked a number of employees, and we have given them the responsibility to be part of certain risk committees and have specific risk management roles within that. So when you create a new risk officer, you will pick that employee. It'll be one of your employees. You'll pick them off the list, and you will determine what their role will be in the risk management process. Are they the ones identifying and defining risk, or are they the ones assessing risk? And are they the ones creating the risk mitigation strategy or the action plan or the review of the action plan? So all of those things can be done by different people. Depends on how large your organization is and how important risk management is to your business. Obviously, as I just pointed out, these risk officers will be assigned to risk committees. So I have a Comp and Ben risk committee, I have a hiring risk committee, an OHS risk committee, one for financial risk, operational risk, and legal risk. You can look at this in different ways. You could say that Comp and Ben and financial risk are associated, but not necessarily. So we have a specific risk committee that will deal with anything that affects financial risk. And so you can go in here and assign as many people as you would like to a particular risk committee. If I wanted to add members, I can do this on the fly. So let's say we put Samantha Jefferson, who is a finance manager, and we put one other person. And we put Patricia Davis, who is a vice president, and Jenny McDonald, who is also a finance manager. Now for each one, we can choose what their role will be. Will they be involved in risk mitigation and assessment, or will they be the ones identifying different types of risks that we need to do? You can do all of this as you like. So every person in the committee will have a different type of responsibility. So we can also define our own risk consequences that we're going to be monitoring for, and that will allow us to classify things properly. As you can see, again, it's color coded. We can choose what type of business impact: operational, financial, legal. How are we going to number this? Meaning 1 to 5, and 1 will be the one that has no significant impact, whereas 5 is the most catastrophic impact, and so on. Now, once we've set up the risk committees and the risk officers and the entire framework, then we can start looking at particular risks that we are concerned about. For example, here I have a risk from foreign exchange trading losses. And you'll see that this type of risk is classified as financial abuse. It is listed under employee conduct as a source, and the consequence is major. And then we have the potential business impact, which is operational, financial, and legal. And the standard strategy would be to reduce it. And here are the typical mitigation action options, but those are default actions that you can add in here, so they're available to anybody who is putting together a risk mitigation plan. And then we can set up how we want to measure the composite risk index and the extended composite risk index. We'll look at this in a minute. And who is assigned to investigate this. Okay, so all this information can be tracked. Now, specific risks will be associated with HR actions or different HR activities or employee activities or jobs. Particular jobs in the company may be more likely, more probable to cause a certain risk to occur. Same thing as we can link that with specific organization units or projects or clients that we're worried about, or individual employees. So you see, this shows the seamless integration between all the different modules in Interact. Just like when we go into our organization structure, for example, you find that at the organization unit level, here's an organization unit. If we open that up, we will find particular risk that is associated with that specific unit. On the other hand, if we go to a particular job in our organization, we will again find that that job can be associated with specific risks. So everything is linked really. It is associated with employee groups, with organization units, with jobs, with projects. Everywhere you turn, there's going to be a link with risk in this business, because obviously risk is pervasive throughout any organization, and the whole purpose is to really make it easy for you to track it. So once we have this framework in place, we're going to look at what are the activities that we can do related to risk. So first of all, there will be a risk assessment that can be done. So let's take a look at the risk assessments. Here I have a risk assessment. So let's say I'm assessing the risk for the month of April, and the assessment planned start date is in fact happening right now, and it started as of the 1st of April, and it's planned to last until the end of April. We're going to have 4 risks assessed. And it will be assigned to the Financial Risk Committee. Here are the 2 members. And it shows me what their responsibilities are. And then we look at the specific types of risks that we can monitor here. We are going to look at the risk from foreign exchange losses, which we've looked at earlier. And now we can define the risk. Obviously is employee conduct, and we can choose a consequence type. We will say that the consequence for this is going to be pretty significant, and the probability is relatively limited. So we'll make that 3, which means the composite risk index is 15. Composite risk index is the multiplication, or is the product of consequence and probability. So the higher the consequence and the higher the probability, the higher your composite risk index. Now if you look at the business impact type, we can choose what kind of business impact this is going to have. It's going to be primarily financial for us. And there we are worried about one that is going to have an impact of 4 out of 5, in which case we're looking at a 60 as a composite, as an extended composite risk index, which is extended because it includes the business impact. Now the recovery time frame for this, if this particular event occurs, if we really have a serious financial loss due to exchange trading losses because there's fraud in the exchange department, the foreign exchange trading desk, then our recovery time might be pretty long. It might take us 180 days. We need to reduce this risk as much as possible. We cannot really eliminate it completely, but we need to reduce it. So the mitigation actions that you can take are listed right here. These are the default actions that we had already looked at before, and we can go in here, say that the risk assessment is being conducted, and it's been assessed by Marissa, in fact, who is the CEO of this firm. The assessment was done on the 23rd, and that's it. Of course, it can go for approval and workflow processes after this. Now, another risk that we could assess would be the property theft. But we're going to stop right here and add this risk and post it. So now it is under review, and it requires a final approval still, which I'm going to do to speed things up. So now this risk assessment has been completed. What has to happen next? This will of course happen through self-service, and employees will log in and so on, is that you will be able to create your risk mitigation plans. Here I have another assessment that I've done. And in this case, we've assessed 3 different risks. One related to risk from foreign exchange trading losses that happen by employees that are not fully qualified, or short-term liquidity crunch due to financial mismanagement, or property theft. Each one of them has been assessed in terms of consequence, probability, and the resulting composite risk index, as well as the potential business impact level and the extended composite risk index. You will see the recovery time frame, the risk mitigation activities that are suggested. All of that is available in the system. So again, everything depends on how frequently you need to have risk assessments, how many risks you are monitoring, and so on. But the ultimate outcome is that you will have a matrix, a risk assessment matrix, that will tell you which ones you need to be most concerned about. For example, the one that we had just done here, which shows me these 3 risks, has a composite risk index of 16, one of them, and therefore that should be the one that we're most worried about, short-term liquidity crunch due to financial mismanagement. But if we wanted to see this in a graphical way, we could also look at it this way. This shows us right here that the one risk in the quadrant showing highest probability and highest consequence is the risk associated with short-term liquidity crunch. So that's really the one that we should be worried about right now. The next step really is that we need to put together risk mitigation plans. Again, done through self-service by different supervisors and employees. So risk mitigation plans are set up to assign a particular people who are the resources for the plan in the end, to assign them specific tasks so that they can assist with mitigating the risk. And that means that this risk mitigation plan, of course, will need to consist of a number of activities. The risk mitigation actions are then detailed with specific for specific resources. It'll tell us exactly how far and how much has been done so far. If there was a need to reschedule the activity, how was it rescheduled and to when? And there will be comments and review information to make sure that everything is on track and will be done on time. You will be able to view that information also in mitigation action plan Gantt charts that will give you a clear picture of exactly what is going on. So once this mitigation action plan has been reviewed and approved, then there will be the scheduled reviews of these mitigation plans. Alright, so those will be done also by employees through their self-service, by the risk officers, and so on. Here you can see that Barbara, as an employee, is involved in risk assessment as well as risk mitigation plans, and she could also be assigned to plan reviews to be done by her. Here's another risk mitigation action plan that she's involved in that has been assigned to her with a specific set of activities. So you can see that everything is handled through self-service, in fact, And because everybody is on the same platform, we can share a lot of very sensitive information and ensure that the right people are involved in this process. And they will be notified of risks that they need to either assess or mitigate, or risk mitigation plans that they need to go and address. That's the beauty of Interact. It's one common platform where we know who plays which role in the organization, and therefore we can use that for communication, but we can also use that for managing risk and many other things.